Welcome to a forum on spirituality, your source of spiritual tools and wisdom from notable guests during these difficult times. Every week, a pioneer in spirituality will be interviewed, someone who's raised the level of consciousness of our community by examining spirit in their lives and sharing it with us. Hello, I'm your host, Vicki Saputo, and I'd like to introduce my guest. Charlie Bloom, who has his master's in social work, together with his wife Linda, who couldn't be here for our interview this time, are psychotherapists, authors, seminar leaders, international consultants, and considered experts in the field of human relations. They've been faculty members and educators at a number of universities and learning institutes, and their work has been endorsed by many nationally recognized speakers and educators. Their book, 101 Things That I Wish I Knew When I Got Married, is currently in its 18th printing, and published in 2010 is Secrets of a Great Marriage. Linda and Charlie are already finishing their third book. So Charlie, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Vicki. It's good to be here.
I understand that although you've been marriage and family therapist for 3.5 decades, your most important work is your own personal relationship and communication challenges during your 39 years of marriage, and that you'll be sharing this in your third book. So what inspired you to write your books?
Well, the first book we wrote about 10 or 11 years ago, and it was inspired by actually my sister's wedding. And she got married, and she asked me to be one of the people who would deliver a reading. She said, just pick something out and read it. And, I'd love for you to just do a little bit. So I looked around, and, I just couldn't find something that really felt right to me. And I asked her if it would be okay if I just put a few of my own thoughts in. And what I came up with was a bunch of one-liners, not so much advice, but things that I had learned over the years.
In your marriage.
Yeah, mostly by making mistakes and
realizing. That's how we all learn.
Yeah, exactly. And so I put about 25 of them together and read them at the wedding, and it was really received very well. And on the drive back from LA, Linda and I just used the time to come up with a whole bunch more. And by the time we had gotten home, we had quite a few. And then over the next few weeks, we ended up with more and more.
Until you got to 101.
Well, actually, we got beyond 101. We got up to over 200 of them. There were a lot of things that I needed to learn. And then we decided to put it into a book. And we thought that it would be good. Instead of just putting the one-liners in, we'd put a little story and a vignette from either our life or from lives of people that we knew, friends, clients, students, whatever. And that became the book. And it like you said, it's selling really well, and we've been really pleased with that. The second book, we wrote this because we, in the business that we're in, we encounter a lot of people who are very discouraged about finding a partner. And we get the question a lot, are there really any available men out there, women out there who are really good candidates for a relationship? People are discouraged. And so we wanted to, show people that, not only are there some really good people out there that are not all taken, but here are some of the things that they've learned themselves and what they've practiced to create the relationships that they've got.
So how do you see relationships as a spiritual practice?
Well, spirituality really, to me, and I think I can speak for Linda too here, it's really about experiencing a sense of wholeness. The word holy is really about being whole. Right?
So how do you keep that spirituality in the relationship?
Well, I think it begins with an intention. And it's not necessary that both people have to share the same intention, although what we found is that when one person really begins with that intention to use this relationship as a vehicle through which I can experience oneness, wholeness, connection with my partner, and by extension, with my own soul and with other people and with the universe itself. If I see that that's something that is really available to me through this relationship, and I can talk a little bit about that in a minute, how to actually go about doing that, then I will act in ways that will promote that and that are also inviting to the people that I'm around.
What I'm hearing too is that a good relationship, I guess, isn't just happening by itself. I mean, you have to create a healthy, happy relationship. Because I know sometimes, you know, there's courses that people take, maybe one of the spouses takes it, and then they try to do it by themselves. But if the husband or the wife isn't cooperating, then...
It can also be a problem, though, to get discouraged too quickly. And a lot of people do. They'll begin doing their, quote, spiritual work. And if the other person doesn't join them, they begin to feel that, well, this isn't workable because we have to both be on the same page, on the same path. And what we found is that that's not necessarily always the case, especially, you know, in this book here, our second book, the couples that we interviewed all shared a deep commitment to the relationship. But they didn't all share the same views about spirituality, although many of them did. Some of them had, well, what we call mixed marriages, that one of them might be very focused on, doing spiritual work, and the other one wasn't particularly motivated. They wouldn't consider themselves a spiritual person. However, they would often act in ways that we would consider to be spiritual. They had embodied a lot of compassion. They were accepting. They had qualities that we consider to be spiritual, but they didn't necessarily have a formal practice, where the other person might have a formal practice that they didn't both share. So it's not, you do have to have two people who are on the same page in terms of the intention, but it doesn't have to look identical all the time.
Also, I think in your book you talk about if one of the people in the relationship is sarcastic or they're putting the other one down and that kind of thing, that is like it cancels out or takes away the spirituality of the relationship.
You know, Vicki, we're all much more sensitive than we realize. And the people that we're living with are more sensitive too. And we've all experienced emotional wounds, sometimes from things that seem to be very benign and not even that significant. Sarcasm is a good example.
Well, there are things, I think the words that you use also is that emotionally activate us. To me, I call that like a trigger.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, things like money and in-laws and child rearing and sex and what have you.
Those are like the top four.
If your button is pushed, how do you find that calmness and that detachment? And
Well, for most of us, we don't find it, at least right away. What people want to do is they want to be able to prevent the reactivity in themselves and in their partner, and so you get a lot of manipulation, trying to coerce myself to be a certain way so I don't react.
So do you stuff it or?
Yeah, well, there's two options that people exercise, and neither one of them really works. One of them is what you just said, which is stuffing it. You know, try not to say something because that's just going to make things worse, or that's going to inflame the situation, and the other one is to indulge those angry feelings or those hurt feelings and express them in ways that are blaming or punitive to the other person. And neither one of those works. So what we encourage people to do is to be conscious of what they're feeling, what their response is, and to make an effort to express the feeling rather than
what you're mad about.
Condemn the other person and judge them and try to get them to apologize or get them to see what they did wrong. But it's to really put the focus on, so what am I feeling? What is it that I experienced when you said that? And not causing the other person to feel blamed or defensive.
I remember many, many years ago they used to talk about not saying things that were below the belt, no matter how angry you were. But I think when people are really angry, sometimes they say things that they can't really take back once they've
You know, one
said 'em.
one of the things that we encourage people to consider is that it's much more realistic and much more productive to focus on how you can repair damaged communications rather than to try to avoid them. Because like you say, when we get triggered, all bets are off. I mean, we don't play by the rules, not because we want to hurt the other person, but because we go on automatic. And those old defensive reactive patterns that get triggered cause us to do and say things that sometimes before the words are even out of our mouth, we say, oh, no, I shouldn't have said that, you know. And people think, well, it's too late, but it's not. And if you know how to put in an effective repair in a relationship when there's been a transgression or disrespect shown, then you can heal the breakdown usually much more quickly than people realize. But it's got to be a real sincere and effective effort.
Well,
that
I
you
would
make.
think that one thing that would fit in here is that if your partner's happy, then you're happy.
Absolutely.
You know, so like if you want to make up, you don't want to stay mad at each other.
I mean, I've never seen a situation where people actually want to continue to make them to feel unhappy and miserable, even if there may be a moment where, you know, I'm really upset with you and I want to get back at you. And
So what are the tools that you can use so that you can be forgiving and you can let it go? And
you know, one of the couples in this book, we asked that question, you know, what are the three most important tools that you can use in those cases for a relationship? And they said awareness, awareness, and awareness. I mean, they are both psychologists and relationship therapists also.
so aware of,
To become aware of my own experience, to become aware of what I'm feeling, to be tuned in to be sensitive to what you're feeling, so that when the inevitable happens, and when you say something that activates me, or when I say something that's hurtful or disrespectful to you, that I can be aware of it and do something that is intended to bring about a healing of the breakdown that was just created between us.
okay, so what happens when there's a breakdown of trust? Like, for example, say somebody has an affair.
Yeah.
Is that repairable? I know you say in your book that irreconcilable differences, you can still be happy in your marriage with irreconcilable differences, which is usually the grounds for people to get a divorce.
I know. But if irreconcilable differences were meant that you had to divorce, then I don't think that there would be many, if any, couples that are married.
Well, everybody's going to have
Everybody's got
differences.
irreconcilable differences.
Okay. But I guess it's
So-
the resentment and the
Yeah.
conflict that...
And like you say, sometimes there are experiences like betrayal that are so painful that it can feel like this is just too much. I can't bear any more of this. And I think most people who get divorced not because they want to get out of the relationship. They would like to be able to have the relationship work, but what they want to get out of is the pain that they're in and the helplessness that they feel in being unable to manage things effectively.
dreading going home and all that.
All of that. And then sometimes in our efforts to avoid or get away from the pain, we'll end up doing things that cause more pain. That's why betrayal, whether it's betraying somebody by having an affair with somebody else, or breaking a promise, or lying to somebody, I mean, those are all forms of betrayal. But that's why betrayal can be so damaging.
Well, you say in your book that secrets are lies, and,
Yeah.
and you talk about
That's right.
Secrecy versus privacy.
Privacy, yeah.
But aren't there some things, like we were talking about a betrayal, aren't there some things that if, like, say this betrayal isn't going anywhere and the person's resolved it on their own and what have you, why bring it up?
Well, first of all, let me define what I mean by a secret. A secret is information that is relevant to the relationship that's being intentionally withheld with the purpose of creating a false impression with the other person. So it's a lie.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah. So let's say that I have, let's say I have a relationship with a woman, but it's not sexual, but she's a close friend, and I feel that it would be better not to share that information with Linda, with my wife, and that's something that I'm deliberately concealing because I'm concerned that
might make her jealous or something.
Yeah. So the concealment of something that is relevant to her makes some part of me unavailable to her because I've got to be careful not to disclose something that I think is going to upset her or upset the relationship. So whenever there's something that is, the criteria really is this affecting the relationship in some way? Is this information relevant to us? There's a lot of things that I do, that Linda does, that we don't share with each other just because we don't need to know about all of that stuff.
But there must be there would probably have been something more to it if you felt consciously that you were going to keep it from your spouse.
Exactly. If I'm honest with myself and I recognize that although I have all these rationalizations and these good reasons, quote, to keep this